Puffballs are very large fungi, up to about 2 meters across, which contain millions upon millions upon millions of spores. If they all survived, within about 3 years, the total volume of puffballs in the world will be 8 times that of this planet. Similarly, a cod lays 9 million eggs. Now, assuming all of those survived, within 3 generations, the oceans would actually be completely packed to the gunnels with cod. The volume of cod in the world will be the same as the volume of the oceans in the world. Neither of these things happen, because although these organisms produce enormous numbers of offspring, almost all of them die before adulthood. Connected with this is the fact that the animals that do this often die after mating. For instance, there's a species of bootlace worm which has no way of moving the sex cells inside it to the outside of its body, so instead of mating, it explodes with pleasure at the end of its life, and they mix together, and then the next generation starts. This is because it's important in those species that the parents don't hang around using up the resources that the children would need otherwise. It's also why she spiders eat he spiders and female praying mantises eat their mates. They need the food to reproduce. Another thing some species do is to spread their offspring by reproducing without mating. Greenfly, for example, are born pregnant and give birth after 20 minutes. Stick insects and water fleas are similar. Some species are even exclusively female, such as certain lizards. This makes it easier for them to have children because they don't have to find a mate, or a mate doesn't have to find them. But there's a price to this. Children born by virgin birth are clones of their parents. So if something happens that kills one of them, it's like the bananas. Something that kills one of them is likely to kill any of them. So a particular disease, none of the species would have resistance to, and they'd all get wiped out. So it's actually quite likely to be driven into extinction fairly easily than if they had children with fathers. Those children would be more individual. As human beings, biologically, we don't follow either of those strategies. We have a few children, get together, we have a few children, which we raise ourselves, and with the possible exception of identical twins, each child is unique. Each child is at least unique as an individual, perhaps not genetically. Rather than dying immediately after mating or giving birth, we stick around and we bring these kids up. In fact, unlike almost every other species, we are basically the opposite, because what we do is we actually have a menopause. We actually stop reproducing so that we can invest perhaps more time in bringing children up. That is how focused we are on parental and perhaps grandparental care. So we can help with the next generation as well. So we're basically the opposite of the other kind of species in 2 different ways. We're all individuals, which enables our society to be flexible and adapt to change, and we need a huge amount of interaction early in our lives because there are so few of us, and otherwise any of us would survive to have children of our own. We need programming. We're not born hardwired to do things, unlike many other species. Now, with respect to society, this means that we cannot really pursue a strategy of child rearing which attempts to standardise children's achievements. That would make them clones and impair our ability to avoid extinction if it succeeds, or cause mental illness otherwise. Or that involves bringing children up in large groups without a concomitant large number of adults. Therefore, schools of the kind that we have now are not educational institutions, and they're certainly not suited to our species. It might be fine that they're not, provided you let go of the idea that the world in which your children and grandchildren live will be extremely stressful and curtail their lives dramatically because of human extinction. That's okay. If that's what you want to happen, that's fine. And I'm not particularly attached to the species surviving, but that is what you are going to have. Now, most people don't want to see a world like this. Therefore, schools are for fish. They are suitable for species which live in large groups, have no parental care, almost all of whose children die in babyhood, and which are genetically identical. That doesn't describe our species. As a result, we, personally, made our children aware that they could or could not go to school. That was their choice. Allowed them to change their minds at any stage, and parented our children ourselves and via a community, rather than relying on state-sponsored childcare. Now, that's not an option for everyone, of course. But also for many people the option exists not to have children. So it's not forced upon you for most of the time. This choice is what we understand follows from our biological nature as a species, which does not ideally die after mating or giving birth, that has relatively few offspring and invests a lot of parental care, has a post-reproductive life stage and considerable individual variation. I personally also feel that this choice is the most compatible with the well-being and long-term survival of individuals and our species, and that's why I chose to give them the option to go to school or not to go to school.